So, welcome again. Let's continue the knowledge visualization. And just now, I will describe how can we start to draw a concept map. Okay, a concept may branch out to 7 plus minus 2 further concepts, since our short-term memory is unable to detect more. It is according to Miller's. The book title was The Magical Number 7 plus or minus 2. It was written 1956. When drawing the concept map of a course, a few rules are to be observed. As a starting point, the number of course lessons should be defined, as every lesson needs to tell a whole. Another rule, which is especially important to pay attention to, is the amount of keywords and topics used. Taking into account short-term memory capacity, we are able to perceive 7 plus minus 2 concepts, and the drawing of CMATs makes concentration easier. One should start with the topic and connect the keywords to it. The place of a concept on a CMAP depends on taxonomy. Just now, this is the most important things. We have to define our taxonomy. Taxonomy is created during visualization by drawing branches, and it is the art of organizing concepts. To define taxonomy, researchers of the flora and fauna gather living beings, then they examine, identify, and classify them. They also face difficulties if they come across a living creature that does not tolerate the taxonomy which has been set up. Where should we include the platypus? Should we make a little space for him, or should we upset traditional taxonomy because of it? Concept maps become simple in the end. It is worth the patience, but only for those who are able to organize concepts, construct and rearrange taxonomy. However, the curse or blessing is that everyone has to draw their own concept maps. Remember, anyone can buy ready-made maps for a few cents, but then everyone will arrive in the same place. In several subjects that I teach, the exam consists of drawing a concept map. There are many ways in which my students represent the main topics and keywords of a course. These maps show the way in which the same content is constructed in each student's head. Everyone has a different way of doing this. When presenting the maps, everybody realizes that there is no single correct solution if new concepts are put in the context created by the students. When students take a blank sheet or open a new file in the mapping program, they are given complete freedom to create map content and structure. This freedom is limited, however, if they are expected to select concepts from a given list. The primary goal of drawing concept maps is the facilitation of thinking instead of the conventional memorization used in formal teaching. Let's pay attention to students. Socrates' famous saying is still valid today. What is he said? Education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. Each student has different interests and learning styles. The teaching content and style must capture their interest fully, challenge their imagination. No one can be forced to learn against their will. Learning is a matter of personal choice. Knowledge differs from person to person. It is totally subjective. There is no knowledge without a knower. Personal knowledge is inseparable from the subject. Personal knowledge has its teachable aspect which can be put into words, the measurement, the rules of action and explanation, but also its unteachable aspects which cannot be put into words, only experience such as perception of events, professionalism, and intuition. As Michael Polanyi, who was a philosopher, told, then we know more than we are able to put into words. Knowledge can never be fully put into words. Some things are inexplicable, even if they are obvious to others. We do not know when the moment is when we get the whole picture, the big picture. It is certain that putting together the images of a well-structured world is easier and more spectacular. Students do not need to learn all positive numbers or all facts. It is sufficient to learn a few and a few rules, for example, the decimal system, to get the whole picture. Consequently, students will know more than what they have learned. They will also be able to answer questions they have not heard to answer they have not heard the answer. The situation is much more complex than the pictures of an ill-structured world. Intuition is uncontrollable, it cannot be intentional. So let's continue with the meaning of poverty of attention. What does it mean? The poverty of attention makes students shallow, makes students' knowledge shallow. Current events become dominant in the social media. Instant messaging, the huge amount of data, may lead to a shallow and self-centered conception of life, to the world of Twitter entries, in which no one is able to focus for more than a paragraph, but wouldn't have the time to do it either. In 1971, Herbert Simon, who was a Nobel laureate in economics, wrote that abundance in knowledge will bring to scarcity of resource, which no one had thought of so far. Attention proved to be this resource, and as Herbert Simon predicted, the beginning of the 21st century is perhaps best characterized by poverty of attention. The phenomenon is noticeable during the learning process, as one can read more and more often about students scattering attention. In 22, George Frank, a German economist, wrote that if we determine the value of our attention dedicated to others in proportion with the amount of attention we get, such an accounting system will appear which records the social currency of individual attention. Thus, attention become a kind of intangible currency, a means of measuring value. In 2010, Nicholas Carr, author and blogger, entitled his latest book Shallow. While writing, he realized that unless he stopped browsing the internet, he would never finish his work. In his book, he writes about the latest ICT achievements that distribute one's attention and do not allow concentration on one thing for a longer period of time. He is convinced that the huge number of knowledge sources urge people to continuous browsing and fast skimming of text. People read books and longer articles that could help focus, reflection, and recollection less and less. Lack of concentration affects long-term memory, as he writes. The author compares short-term memory to a thimble and long-term memory to a bath tube. And he said that reading a book is like filling a bath tube with several thimblefuls of water from a constantly trickling tap. However, there are several more and more rapidly running taps on the internet, and we endeavor to somehow figure out when and which thimbleful of water to pour into the tube. Fitting thimbles together is difficult or even impossible. This means that we are unable to store knowledge items in our long-term memory and to recall them from there. There is neither time nor space for a little reflection. This new kind of reading creates a new kind of writing. For example, several states in America do not teach cursive writing. However, 10 tones typing is required. Nicholas Carr suspects that if attention is fragmented, writers will have to abandon writing long books that require attention and formulate their thoughts briefly. Perhaps this warning also applies to us teachers. And one more admonition, this time by Bill Gates. When examining knowledge workers, Bill Gates found that they spend almost one-third of their working time searching the necessary elements of knowledge, which is a huge waste of time. Today, almost all knowledge is available, while we do not have the means to validate them. Teaching should probably focus on this, that is, on enabling students to pick valuable knowledge. And for this, the qualities that students acquire while browsing through mashup content and drawing concept maps are really necessary. Mind-numbing numbers and dazing PowerPoint presentations do not make placing new concepts into context and understanding ideas any easier. Nowadays, bombarding people with short, catchy messages that are clear to everyone is prerequisite of accelerated life. Books are getting shorter, Shakespeare plays are staged in 2 acts, the message being thoroughly highlighted and in order to prevent misunderstanding. When the emperor yawned for the third time in one scene of Milos Forman's Amadeus, the performance was interrupted. In exaggeration, we could say that during fact-based, pretty PowerPoint presentations that are frequently used in formal education, everyone falls asleep. Students should be given the opportunity to cover their own learning path at their own pace. This is, however, difficult to achieve in the traditional classroom, but when developing an online course content, it should definitely be taken into account. A printed syllabus to satisfy everyone's personal learning path is inconceivable, but the flexibility of online course mashups could offer this chance. Another important difference is freshness, and while in the case of printed syllabus being up to date is almost unthinkable, the online course can be provided with any content needed at any time needed. Students can check course content or fill out the test when they feel like it, and not when they are assembled for it. They are able to learn at their own pace in a safe and private environment, which gives them the opportunity to present their ideas without having to fear sanction. To help students find their personal learning style, the teacher needs to assume a dual role. On one hand, the teacher outlines the curriculum that gives a conceptual framework. This will be the scaffolding on which students can move to higher and higher knowledge levels. This scaffolding can be built by using the concept maps. On this map, all students may explore their personal learning paths, and at the end of the course, they can draw their own maps. These maps may also be used for assessment. On the other hand, through mashup contents, the teacher can create an environment where students are free to choose promising, exciting topics. In this environment, the teacher functions as a knowledge transmitter who helps orientation in the vastness of knowledge. Not only has he or she to focus on creating contests, but also on students' progress concerning the school curriculum. This often requires a lot more effort and attention, as well as extra working hours. So, the assumption that online courses displace and eliminate the need for teachers is completely wrong. Not only do they not become obsolete, but their presence must become more pronounced and direct. My experience suggests that in order to find one's personal learning path, attention must be paid to the following. The learning process needs to be fun. It should bring excitement and perpetuate it in the learners. The state of flow can perhaps be achieved by mashup content diversity. The focus should be on what is worth learning by the end of the course instead of what must be learned by the end of the course. Mashup content must not be designed for average students, as content to meet the curiosity of both low and high achievers may be included. Consequently, everyone could attend what is satisfactory for them. With the help of concept maps that could be covered in various ways, perhaps this will also become possible. Help students find the latest resources. If teachers do not only expect the reproduction of a well-structured content, students will be prepared to independently discover and validate the knowledge sources they need in the future. Presentation of influential thinkers, most powerful thinkers of the topic, as well as availability of links to important websites might also help. I'm really curious on your CMAP, on your concept map. What happened with you? What have you construct in your mind during this semester? As you see in the previous slides, I used the concept maps for assessment in a number of courses. So I often face the question of what makes a good map and how its quality can be determined. So, what makes a good concept map? Most importantly, perhaps, it has to answer a question. However, an understanding concept map does not merely answer this question, but it also gives an explanation by the use of linking lines. An excellent concept map is concise. All concepts and propositions should be relevant to the topic of the concept map. It should not include unnecessary concepts, propositions, or crosslinks, and should not be missing any key relevant concept, propositions, or crosslinks. Concept labels and linking lines on the map may only be of a few words. A concept map is ultimately a hierarchy with a generic or inclusive concept at the top or at the center. As we move further or downwards in this hierarchy, concepts become more and more specific. A specific concept can usually be linked to 3 or 4 concepts. An excellent concept map is like a good poem. We love to read it, but we are unable to quantify why we like it. Professional concept mappers recognize the excellence of a CMAP. However, teaching its method of construction is very difficult. During the assessment, students present the concept maps they have made, and while they talk about it, it becomes clear to the teacher and other students who were successful in placing the new concept in their own personal context and in developing a new conceptual frame. Based on a funny story, new knowledge is easier to be constructed. For example, Chekhov's popular plays are, almost without exception, comedies as far as their literature genre is concerned. The author considered humor the most important tool for storytelling and sincerely believed that any sentence can capture attention if one can laugh at it. All modern contents prefer the use of humor. The popular TED talks are also expected to make the audience laugh. Boring teachers have no place in education. There is no better humor than the peculiar humor human comic. The landscape may be beautiful, charming, great, ugly, or insignificant, but it can never be funny. We can laugh at an animal, but only because we notice something human-like in its behavior or expression. We can laugh at a hat, but in such a case we do not make fun of its material, we mock at its man-designed shape, at the human, which is the material expression of this hat. Theater also teaches in a playful manner. A good performance sometimes remains with us for weeks. It makes us think, teaches us, and raises questions. If we are lucky, we can even come close to catharsis. It is more difficult to maintain attention than to attract it. According to the proverb, a promise made is a promise kept. In other words, we don't like if we are aroused but not told anything important. We can easily have to fate of the character from the fable who called out so many times that the voice was coming at the end, nobody believed him. This might happen to us as well. People will not listen to us or will not visit our webpage. Quite a few have already realized that instead of writing reports illustrated with complex data, it is more effective to tell a story. It is like the title of Denning's book, The Secret Language of Leadership. Narrative imagination is the basis of our thinking. When listening to a story, it does not occur to us that we should use all the facts for better understanding of the characters. Moreover, we do not even think to assume any correlations between them. Sense making is not difficult for us. It is innate, just like breathing. Generally, a story is not true or untrue. As this is inevitable dependent on interpretation, it is realistic or unrealistic. It is difficult to accept that narration is stronger than the sophisticated business analysis of the 21st century. A good story preserves all those intentions, conflicts, successes, and failures that helps us in interpreting our world. We recall facts but remember stories. We recall facts but remember stories, don't forget it. Those who cannot write also express themselves in stories. and with these they relate to one another. It seems that this has been forgotten, and as compared to facts, we trust less the pictures featured in the stories. The stories are about the hero's journey. Take Odysseus or Morpheus from Matrix as examples. The hero's journey consists of three main parts: setting off, the initiation, and returning home. They lured by something. First, they puts up resistance, then they steps over the threshold of the new world. The journey of the decision maker is similar to this. A decision maker undertakes the unimaginable, has to fight with the analysts who only believe in predictability, but eventually, if decision maker is successful, he or she will be celebrated in this business. Lately, the script writers operating in the background of the movie world have been teaching decision makers as well. Although business people are usually suspicious about stories, the fact is that statistics often lies and financial statements are massaged. If a decision maker understands that it is his or her brain's natural demand to put facts and experiences into stories, the key to the ability to impress the public will be to meet this demand, not to show resistance to it. Organizational storytelling is beginning to take roots in some larger companies like Xerox or 3M. Arts and business are not so far apart after all. In my online course supporting decision making, I tell the 1-minute stories. Each of them is a one character story whose moral is connected to the lesson. My story is interrupted by some subscripts that emphasize its point. One objection to online courses is exactly the fact that the students does not know the teacher, so interaction is quite difficult. Is it important for the teacher to be a real person whom the students get acquainted to? And here the short videos play an essential part. The tone and facial expression involve something due to which stories become more credible, as if they could be read. The another part of my online courses is the TED Talk, Technology, Entertainment and Design, TED.com. This page is created really a fashion. Carmina Gallo's book about the 9 secrets of the stunning TED Talks quickly became a bestseller. Those students who are in an environment that has multiple effects on their senses will always, not only sometimes, be capable of better recalling compared to those who only heard or read something. I am often amazed how easily ideas heard during a TED talk are remembered. It is not compulsory to listen to them during the course, yet almost every student clicks on it and then can remember almost every second of it. The earlier mentioned Carmine Gallo claims that the speakers practice 200 hours before an 80-minute talk. Not only practice makes perfect, but also passion that needs to be shared. So, at the end, it is unpredictable how long the era of shallow knowledge will last. However, it is predictable that the cognitive capacity of short-term memory will remain 7 plus or minus 2. Support for the concept maps with different ICT tools application may be refined, but mapping will always depend on the knowledge of the mapper. mainly the personal knowledge. These ICT tools will support the how and not the what. The knowledge in people's mind will continue to be decisive for the subject of teaching. It is an adventure to learn, to find out something. In this journey, students should be encouraged and helped use the different contents need to be presented to them in the easiest and most elegant way. My presentation about visualization designing a curriculum. Maybe we should strongly recommend it rather than make it a standard. The process of learning is internal for each individual, including conversation, reading, and wandering. It was said by Jerome Bruner. I mentioned you. He was a very famous psychologist, one of the famous in the 20th century. This activity is backed up by the content maps and mashup contents. I hope you will enjoy drawing this CMAP.